Hello and welcome. I'm your host and founder of Heaven to Earth, Susan Fleming, business alignment therapist, equipping kingdom leadership to multiply life without burnout. And life stands for legacy, impact, freedom, and energy. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. I'm so very excited for this leadership series that we're diving into, and really excited for you to meet our guest today, Kate Nash. Kate is an industry expert in course creation. She's developed hundreds of courses taken by more than 250,000 students. She started creating courses in 2002, beginning with former technology giant RadioShack, and later worked with Publix, a supermarket company in southeastern US. She's been a certified professional in talent development since 2007. In 2020, she left the corporate world to help online course creators deliver programs their clients and customers love. She's also a mom to two incredible humans and loves reading science fiction, history, and the Bible. Kate, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you extended this invitation because I find your content very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Me too.
So let's just set the scene for the listeners and the viewers. And if you could just take us back to 12-year-old Kate. What is she doing? What is she into? And just what's she getting into at 12?
12 is such an interesting age. I think it was really kind of like the last year before life got super hard at 13. At 13, it got hard for lots of reasons, but I guess it was already difficult from my childhood, but I still think, it was a really good year. I had my best friend. I went to the school where the teacher just felt warm and loving and wonderful. It was only a school of maybe 30 kids at the most. And I had the same teacher from 5th grade until I graduated. So I had started
Wow.
there at 10. And I remember when I went into that school, she had my desk all set up and my name was there and I felt so welcomed.
Mm.
So I think, that 10 to 12, that was just such a beautiful time in my life. So
Yeah, that's awesome. At what point did you do you feel like you really caught the vision of what God was calling you to do and who he was calling you to serve?
I really, really loved God quite a bit even from the time I was young. I remember when I was 7 and I first heard that Jesus wanted to be my friend and be my savior. And at 7, I remember feeling like I want that. I got
Mm.
baptized in my bathtub by my aunt. So at that point, I really didn't have a vision for who I was at all, but I loved God quite a bit. And I think it was at 12 that my dad had caught me. I had written a paper on volcanoes, and my dad and my teacher were so sure that I had plagiarized, which I had never heard of, and I got accused of plagiarism. And my dad had tested my ability to write. He's like, okay, write 4 paragraphs about the life of Christ. And about 2.5 paragraphs in, he had ripped the paper out of my hand, ready to accuse me of plagiarism. And when he read it, he was like, oh, okay. So at the age of 12, I really felt like I could be a writer.
Yeah, that's incredible. I don't know many people who, at that young of an age are have their talents and their gifts recognized. So I love that your dad was like, wow, she's really, he really affirmed that and called that out in you.
Yeah, what's interesting is I didn't think I was a good writer. I was just writing reports. I was just
Yeah.
doing my homework. So
Yeah.
I didn't notice any talent there until my dad had noticed it. So
Mm-hmm.
that is, even to this day, he feels like I'm one of the best writers ever, which I don't think that is true, but not bad. But I think maybe he's got a little bias going on.
Yeah, maybe so. But maybe not. I know I had a similar experience with writing. I didn't recognize that I was good at it either. And, but that's how it really just works when you're operating in your gifts. What you find easy,
Mhm.
you don't recognize as anything special. And it takes that someone else coming and saying, no, like you're really good at this. And, this, it's not normal at 12 to be writing the way that you're writing.
Yeah, and really, to be
Yeah.
honest, I don't think it's just the writing. I think what comes natural for me and was natural, and maybe the reason why that looks so good, is it's very natural for me to take a bunch of information and to organize it. So organizing information, just supernatural. That's why I remember thinking I had to write 4 paragraphs on the life of Christ. So I automatically broke it down in my head, and I'm writing, okay, so there will be the birth story. So it was already already figured out how I was going to take everything I knew and put it in 4 paragraphs.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like it's been, I know you said that you've always had that love for Jesus, but do you feel like it's been difficult at all to remain focused on that vision or that calling that he's given you through the years?
Yeah, because like sometimes I feel like Jesus is a pity friend.
Mm,
Like he let me in, but just barely. So many times in my life I feel like I needed Jesus, but not, which is blowing my mind as I grow older, not that Jesus, and he doesn't need us, but that he involves us and wants to use us. So it felt like I was a charity case for God.
mm,
So I think that's probably been some of the hardest struggle in stepping into probably more of my power, more of the power that he's given me, more of his power, I guess. So
mhm,
is thinking that I didn't have any.
mm. Yes, yes. And I find that with so many women that I talk to, and a lot of my clients, they don't know the power that they have. And they, like you said, he doesn't need us, but he desires relationship with us. And that's hard for a lot of people to get their head around. So
Mhm.
yeah, I can totally relate with that feeling like, oh, well, he's my friend because he has to. Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed about you in the time that we've known each other is that you really show up so authentically, and you see a lot of people in the space who will dilute their beliefs or not show up fully as who they are, and you can tell when somebody's not being authentic. How have you been able to really step into being yourself and connecting authentically with your audience?
That's such an interesting question because I don't feel I've always been authentically
Mm,
myself. I feel like there's always been a desire to be authentically myself. But I remember when I was younger, believing messages like that it was okay to have different personas. And I think, and this is not necessarily interpreted the same way by all people. But that sometimes people say they wear different hats. So
yeah.
I wear my mom hat, I wear my business hat. But I've begun to see that approach for me hasn't worked because that hat turns into a persona. And
Mm,
so the desire that I've had over the last few years is how can I draw in all these disparate hats or these personas into a single person? This idea of integrity. Integrity comes from the word integer, meaning one or whole.
mm,
Being a person of integrity, how can I be the same in every situation? So I'm the same when I show up here. I'm the same when I talk to my daughter. I'm the same when I talk to my dad. And though I'm daughter, mother, friend, I'm still the same person. As far as authenticity, the difficulty for me when I was younger is feeling like I wasn't right, or I wasn't the right person, or I wasn't good enough. So pretending and trying my very best to be the person that I thought I should be, which wasn't necessarily me at all. So I
yeah.
was horribly guilty of being a people pleaser. And, now with the wisdom of being over 50, God, I wish I had known this when I was 30, knowing that, being raised by somebody who is narcissistic, which is part of mental illness. I should probably just say being raised by somebody who is got mental illness going on. My desire when I was a kid, because I felt unlovable, was to try and earn approval. Well, earning approval turns into people pleasing. And so my desire has always been to be authentic, but I really didn't accomplish it until much, much later. So I'm not sure if that answers your question about how I show up authentically, because
Yeah.
I feel like I
Yeah.
haven't for a very long time, but I always wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, again, another commonality I see in this journey is, well, even in my own story, is not learning really that identity piece until we're older. It's so easy to get caught up in, well, who does everybody else say that I am or think I should be? And that's, one of the reasons I really did want to do this leadership series is to see what is different about these women who are owning their power and standing up for their beliefs and being authentically themselves. How did she develop into who she is? And so I love that you share that part of your journey, especially about having, a parent with their own struggles and how that shaped and formed how you saw yourself. I mean, that's a huge piece for everybody because, we're all influenced by our parents or whoever raised us. And so I love, even in your answer, you're just authentically you answering the question saying, I wasn't always like this. So I love that. Yeah, that's really, really helpful. One of the other pieces I wanted to touch on was the idea of having mentors and coaching and masterminds. And it's something that I really value. I find important, has been really beneficial for me. And so I'm curious for you, how important have mentorships and coaching been for you?
Yeah, it's been hard for me to accept mentorship because the whole idea of believing for such a long time that I was unlovable, it's made it very difficult for me to believe people when they say good things about me. I remember interpreting this as a lack of there are a couple of things. I would believe that I really couldn't understand what they really meant when they said one thing, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
and I had to learn to I believed like everybody else kind of got things better than I did. And it really wasn't the fact that I couldn't trust others. It really boiled down to not being able to trust myself. And I had to learn to receive love and receive direction without thinking that somebody's direction was pointing out my mistakes. Believing that I'm inherently broken made it difficult to receive feedback because
Mm.
anytime anybody gave me feedback, I would receive it as a reminder of my brokenness. It's
Yeah, really filtering through that lens of I'm not okay, or there's something wrong with me, or um, I'm not good enough. Those core beliefs really affect how we filter the information coming in. And I too, it's so interesting. I haven't heard this much of your journey, but we have so much overlap. um, because yeah, for me too, I can say it was that lens of rejection really made it difficult for me to receive hearing anything good about myself.
Mhm.
And so I love that you brought that up because I think there will be a lot of people that resonates with. Um, so how did you kind of flip that switch and come into being able to receive love and compliments and good things from
Well,
people?
I'm still a work in progress here. Well, one is the mentorship that I really got when I was younger mostly depended on books and
Mm.
the Bible because it doesn't feel so targeted towards me. So it feels a little bit easier. Um, the other is, and this is really, really hard for me to talk about, but my best friend died about 6 years ago. And it really caused me to look closely at my life.
Mm.
And I saw she was a very beautiful person. I love her so much. I loved her a lot, but I feel like she made a lot of mistakes in her life because she didn't accept how beautiful she was. And
Mm.
so it really made me look at myself and how I was viewing myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about the verse that talks about us being one body. And well, there's multiple verses.
Yeah.
That we're each part is unique, but we all function together. And even in the difficulty of that situation and that loss, you were able to um, learn not just something good came out of it, but that you had the insight, to really evaluate what was going on with you and how could you just be better as a person. And so often I see people who are really in hard situations like that, and they don't see the opportunity to learn from it. And so I love that you brought out that piece of being able to look at someone else's life, and not that we want to compare to each other, but there's always room for us to grow and improve and be that person that God's calling us to be. And so through that, really through that tragedy, it sounds like that was a moment for you to go, okay, maybe I need to do some things differently.
Yeah. And I don't see it so much as comparing, like you said, I see it as
Right.
inspiring each other.
Mhm.
We can see somebody else's journey and go, we have an opportunity to do something amazing like that person. Or
Yeah.
we have an opportunity to, like, she's an amazing, beautiful person. The fact that she was stuck in her particular life has really nothing to do with who God created her to be. It had to do
Mhm.
with how she saw herself.
Mhm. Yeah.
If she could see herself the way that I saw her, the way that God saw her, I don't believe her life would have been as difficult as it was.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a huge piece of it. That identity piece again of just, how we view ourselves impacts everything that we do and how
Absolutely.
we operate in the world. And yeah, that's such a big piece. What is something that you think people misunderstand about you, or maybe misunderstand about what you do as a course creator?
Okay. Well, there's a lot that people misunderstand about me, but I think it's kind of like, okay, so they're working on a road close to my home,
Mhm.
and we believe this road was going to be done by December of 2021.
Oh,
It's
wow.
it's still not done yet. And from the outside, we can say, really? Just come on, get some asphalt out there, roll out the road. But there's clearly more going on than just building the road out there. And
Mm.
because I don't know anything about road building, it's what seems to me like a task that should have taken maybe a week has taken over a year. So they were working on this road when I moved here a year ago, and they're still working on it today.
Wow.
I think course creation is the same way. A lot of people think like it's super easy. You just take your content and you just split it up. But there's so much more to it than just taking your content and splitting it up, because a lot of people think, well, I just need to take my content and break it down. But your focus is not the content. Your focus has to be the learner. Who are
Mhm.
your learners? What are they trying to accomplish? Why are they motivated to do this? What's standing in their way? Because a lot of times what you're trying to do is break down information. And if it's some information that benefits them, they may already know some of that information, like diet culture, like people want to lose weight. So they sign up for a course on weight loss. What new information are you going to give somebody on weight loss? I mean, they already know so much. So clearly it's more than information. Clearly it's more than breaking it down. Who are these people? What is standing in the way? What is motivating them? What is causing them to emotionally eat? And how do we address the root causes and not just give somebody an action list or a checklist. A lot of times too, course creators think that it's really just about the way they deliver information, and they're not necessarily thinking about what's going on in the brain of their learners as they're hearing that, and how can they increase retention.
Mm.
That's what I would say is like, often it just feels like, especially if it works well, it feels like it should be easier than it is. Kind of like when I watch Michael Jordan, play basketball, he makes it
Yeah.
look easy. So
Yeah.
clearly I just have to like throw a ball a couple times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. That it is more involved than you think it is. And a lot of times I will hear people talking about it, like you said, as just take the content you already have and put it to, organize it, put it together. And so I love that you brought that out, that it's so much more than just content. You really got to think about, who are you talking to?
Mhm.
Who is your audience? Who is the person that's going to open this up and be receiving the information, and what's the best way for them to receive it, and what's going to make it easier for them to implement it and get it in their brain. And yeah, so I love that. It's definitely um, so much deeper than what it looks like on the surface. I had at one point looked at some course creation materials, and I was immediately like, whoa, this is way more than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it is. It's worth it though. I really feel like rule number one with course creation is love your avatar.
Mm,
So it goes back to, the two greatest commandments, love God, love others. When you're talking about course creation, you're talking about many, many times, not all courses are this way, but you're talking about transformation. So
mhm.
changing the way they see themselves, change the way they see the world, others, God. Um, and that comes by loving them and recognizing where they are in their journey and what they need in order to progress. So
Yeah. Yeah. And even that right there, that statement that you made about you're bringing transformation to somebody. And a
mhm,
lot of times I don't think courses are viewed as transformational.
mhm,
I think they have this view of, coaching is transformational because you're working directly with the person, and when you're doing a course, and maybe that person who designed it isn't there really in it with you, and it's like pre-recorded stuff, I think sometimes people don't take it as seriously. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, very, very often. A lot of the courses are with videos, and videos are great. But what happens when a lot of people put the video on is they start getting consumed with, do I look okay? Do I make sense? So the focus is often very inward. And, when you're not designing it, thinking about your avatar's journey to begin with, you're thinking about the content. And then when you're recording it and you're nervous and you're thinking about how you come across, then none of it is really geared for connection. But
Mhm.
that doesn't have to be that way. You can create a course considering who your avatar is, what is that transformation, and you can record content where you're talking to the people. And if books are transformational, and I've been definitely transformed by books in my life,
Yeah.
books are not meant for a dialogue, but courses can be, even pre-recorded ones. And so books can be transformational. Courses can definitely be made transformational as well. I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think they can. I think it takes, that intentionality, like you say, of really learning about your avatar and who's going to be looking at that material.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think, because we're talking about leadership, right? What do you think makes a great leader?
Without a doubt, I think it's empathy.
Mm,
But I think there's more to it than just empathy. I think you also need to have some self-awareness. I think self-awareness is probably my new greatest strength that I'm going to pound the drums on forever. But this is the thing. We want we talk a lot of times about communication, but the quality of the communication suffers if you don't actually have self-awareness. So I think it's a beginning to say something like, having those difficult conversations around, Susan, when you do this, I feel this way. That's a great start, but it doesn't really put any responsibility on you for why you feel that way. I'm putting the responsibility on you for why I feel that way. I think it takes more self-awareness to go, so why do I feel that way when Susan does that? Who's in charge of my feelings? Is Susan in charge of my feelings, or am I in charge of my feelings? Where is this coming from? Why am I feeling triggered? And knowing, kind of with self-compassion, with curiosity, with courage, looking back at why I'm feeling triggered in a particular situation is really going to help me be a better leader.
That's
Lead myself first.
right. That's so good. That's so good. I could camp out right there because every one of those questions, I mean, yes, 1,000% yes. You have to lead yourself first. And so many leaders I've seen, I won't name names, but they are not leading themselves well. And it's evident when they get up and then try to lead other people. So I think that's a huge key for people to take away from this, is that you've got to lead yourself well first. You have to deal with your own stuff first. I was actually talking to someone who's a ministry leader, and she used this term, bleeding while leading. And I was like, I immediately had a picture of what she meant. And it is that person who hasn't healed from their own stuff, who hasn't dealt with their own stuff. And then they get in front of other people and try to lead them, and they're not leading themselves. So I love that you brought that out. There's a gold mine in that for sure.
And that's not to say that we shouldn't lead while we're bleeding, but we should be addressing that too. And there are times when we may have to step down from our responsibilities. But there are also times when we can't. When I'm talking about leading my children, I'm leading my children while dealing with a lot of the wounds from my childhood. I can't just say, hold on, I can't do these kids anymore.
Right.
They need me. And so I need to deal with my issues. I need to, figure out what the cause of my wounds are. And I don't think I'm ever going to be done. I mean, I think that's another thing, is recognizing that regardless of what state we're in, we can still lead in some capacity, whether it's self-leadership, or whether it's leading my kids, or whether it's a guy that was stopped on the road today and just stopping to see and make sure he was okay. His car had completely stopped, and he didn't even have blinker lights available. So he's standing behind his car, and I'm like, oh, please don't let anybody hit him.
Yeah.
Stop and ask and check to see if he's okay and if he's got somebody coming. There's lots of opportunities where we have opportunity to lead, even when we're feeling like we're broken.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good point, that leadership is not just when you're in front of people.
Well, Moses did not feel ready for leadership, I'm sure. When God called him, he was like, nope, I don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
And Gideon is such a great example. He's like, I'm the youngest son of the smallest family, the smallest tribe. I'm hiding out in the wine press, threshing my grain. So, I mean, when he did pull down the Asherah pole, which God asked him to do, he did it in the middle of the night. And then when they came to his house, he hid behind his dad. I mean, so he was not ready for leadership. And yet God knew that he had leadership potential.
I love that. One of the things I say is, heaven will always address us as who we are, right? Not by our current circumstances, not by who we think we are, right? But God sees our true identity, and he will always address us as that person. And so if we'll just listen in, he'll tell us, he'll tell you who you are. And if you can grab hold of that, Man, I mean, that's the foundation for everything else. One of the things that I know about you is you believe there's no competition in the kingdom. There's no competition between women. We're not comparing, we're not doing all that stuff. So what do you value most in a partnership or a collaboration with somebody?
Well, I led a team of very diverse people. Most of them were
Mm.
women, one guy. And what I saw this happen in our small little microcosm of this team that I led a few years ago. And we had incredible talent among them. And most of the time we work on our own little projects. So we didn't have a lot of real collaborative environments, but we used a methodology that's called agile methodology or Scrum, which falls under agile methodology, which you can look it up. It's one of these boring project management type of philosophies. But what it is like, it's pretty much an all hands on deck, everybody working together. What's super cool about it is because everybody is working collaboratively towards a particular goal, and it's done in a way where we're talking about what needs to be done daily, and then we're transparently talking about what we're all doing. It was so awesome to see these diverse talents come together and do this. So I might find something difficult, but this one lady was able to do it without a problem. And this person, stepped up into this, and this perspective really helped. And it really helped us recognize the need for diversity in talents and perspectives. I see this a lot too with MBTI. I love the Myers-Briggs. I know a lot of people like Enneagram, but I really, really love Myers-Briggs because I speak that language, and Enneagram looks really difficult. So what I love about it is I know I'm an INTP, and that's my preference, but I can act as any other type if I need to. It's not natural. I can, put on a different hat, as it may, as we said. I can pretend to, be the type of person who loves checklists, and I can create a really good project plan or a checklist as necessary, but that's not what I love doing. But recognizing that other people have other talents and love them is fabulous, part of personality. And so that's what I see with the kingdom of God in particular, and women in particular, is like in Ephesians when Paul is talking about how we each have gifts and then we're brought together in one body. We're doing that God is doing that on purpose. He's saying, Susan, I'm going to give you a key that Kate needs.
Mm.
It's not for you. You think it's for you, but it's what Kate needs. And so when we can share what it is that God's given us, we all we're all blossoming. We're all doing better. You do better because you share it, and I do better because you share it.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Your keys are not for you. But I love that. That's really insightful to recognize, and something that I didn't recognize until I was in my 30s maybe. When I finally figured out, okay, these things that God has gifted me with, they're not really for me. So I love that you brought that out. Curious to know, in your decades of experience, what do you think is the most important skill that someone needs to master to really sustain a successful business?
Trust that God has it all figured out.
Hmm.
It may not work what you have right now, and that's okay, because a lot of this stuff is an experiment. Failure is okay. It's not fatal. And we learn, is it really failure if you learn something from it anyway? But God's not up in heaven wringing his hands going, oh my gosh, myself, what have I done with Kate? What have I done? Have I left her? I forgot about her. What have I done? So trusting that there is a purpose even in our failures. Not only do we get to learn about ourselves, not only do we get to learn that we can trust God in the scarier parts of our life, I feel that there are some things that you can learn from failure that you cannot learn from success.
Mm.
And I wonder
Yeah.
For those people, you've seen, if you've lived any amount of years, you've seen kids where everything came easy to them when they were younger. And then when they were older, they almost didn't have the tools they needed to
Mm.
accomplish difficult tasks. I
Yeah.
feel like if you start a business and everything is successful from the get-go, well, yeah, it feels good, but you may not have learned some skills that you really are going to need for the long term. And so I feel like some of those early mistakes and failures are beneficial in building strength. And I'm backed up by Romans 5 and by James 1.
Yeah.
Count it all joy when you run into problems, because that's where our character comes from.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That character development is definitely a foundational piece that we need.
Yeah.
Something I found out when I got into business, when I first started, I tell people that business and marriage are the two things that will just magnify anything going on with you that you need to deal with.
Well,
And
it's really good. Speaking, and I don't
yeah,
mean to interrupt, but I think this is one of the things that has really been on my heart lately. When we talk about wanting to be a leader, and we talk about we want to be we want to be successful, look to the people who are leaders and the people who are successful now, because so many of them have character flaws
mm,
that only got amplified as they were growing in their leadership. So those times when we get to build our character and we get to build our skills and take care of those character flaws at an earlier stage are a true blessing. Because I think sometimes, like, do I really want to be escalated into a leadership position before that character flaw gets figured out?
mm,
No. I mean, think about all the people who are hurt by these Christian leaders who
yeah,
find themselves in really bad situations. So you're
yeah,
right that we don't like, those character flaws getting, highlighted through our marriage and through our business,
yeah.
but it's so necessary.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's so necessary. I think that's a good key there too for people to pick up is valuing the journey, valuing the hard parts, because that's where you learn the most about yourself. And that's going to benefit you. Oh gosh, that's priceless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we started out talking about 12-year-old Kate. So let's return back to her for a moment. If you could turn back time and talk to her, what would you say?
I've thought about this a lot because it's a question you hear from time to time.
Hmm.
And because I create transformational courses. And a course can be transformational, and a person can go through it and still not be transformed, but not because the course is broken, but because the person isn't ready yet. And so I don't know what I would tell my 12-year-old self, because I don't know what she was ready for most. But
Mm,
I think if I was going to do anything, I'd want to infuse her with some uh, maybe glimpse that she is worth it.
mm. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
because of what she does, but just because she was created in the image of God, and God didn't screw up when he made her.
Amen. Yes. That's so good. That's so good. Every 12-year-old little girl needs to hear that. You are worth it. Absolutely. Well, Kate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. This has been a great conversation. And thank everybody for tuning in today. If you want to learn more about me or any of my guests, all the links can be found in the description of the video. So don't forget to subscribe and share it on all your social platforms. And remember that you have the power to multiply life. That's legacy, impact, freedom, and energy without burning out. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you very much.